All right, welcome to This Explainer. The newly declassified Jeffrey Epstein files, well, they've just dropped a bombshell that changes this entire story. We're going to break down how this is shifting from, a horrific sex trafficking scandal into something way bigger, a tangled web of international espionage. And it all starts with a direct line to the Kremlin.
So let's just dive right in with the single most jaw-dropping revelation from these files. It's all right here, in this one sentence from an FBI form. Get this, it alleges that Epstein wasn't just some financier. No, he was supposedly a key player, a primary wealth manager for Vladimir Putin. We're talking about moving and hiding massive amounts of money for the Kremlin.
And look, this isn't just some wild rumor floating around. This claim comes from a massive, and I mean massive, 3.5 million page document dump. This was all mandated by law, the Epstein Files Transparency Act. We're talking about a literal mountain of raw data that investigators are, right now, still digging through to connect all the dots.
So, a geopolitical bombshell. That's a big claim. But what do these files really tell us? Well, they paint this incredible picture of a guy operating at the absolute highest levels of global politics. He wasn't just rubbing elbows, he was apparently trying to build an entire shadow financial system for one of America's biggest rivals.
And this wasn't just a one-off thing. As you can see from this timeline, the documents show this was a years-long, persistent effort to get inside the Kremlin. I mean, look at this. In 2011, he's claiming he has an appointment with Putin. By 2018, he's offering to tell the Russian foreign minister how Trump thinks. He was actively, relentlessly positioning himself as a go-to financial guy, especially right after those heavy sanctions hit Russia in 2014.
Now let's talk about his strategic vision, or lack thereof. Because what Epstein was pitching to Russia was way more ambitious than just helping them hide some cash. He was proposing a total re-engineering of their entire financial system. The goal? To make it completely bulletproof against any Western sanctions.
And the ideas he was throwing around were, well, they were out there. He's talking about a new bank that's basically a hedge fund on steroids, lending out 9 times its reserves. Super risky. Then he pitches a brick currency, a kind of crypto backed by oil meant to totally sideline the US dollar. He called it his Sputnik vision, this grand plan for Russia to just leapfrog the entire global financial community, a real shock to the system.
But here's the reality check. This slide just lays it out perfectly. His grand strategy? A total flop. When the BRICS nations actually did create their own development bank, they ran in the complete opposite direction. Instead of his high-risk, high-leverage model, they went for stability, for AAA credit ratings. They modeled it on the World Bank. Epstein's wild schemes were just rejected. They were seen as technically flawed, basically financial vaporware with no real substance.
Okay, so his big-picture strategic ideas were a bust. But, and this is a huge but, when it came to the tactical stuff, to the nuts and bolts of just moving money, the files show he was incredibly successful.
And the amount of money we're talking about is just staggering. Senate investigators found that his accounts processed something like 4,700 separate transfers. The grand total? Over $1.1 billion, flowing through huge banks like JP Chase.
Which, of course, brings up the million-dollar question, or, in this case, the billion-dollar question. After 2014, Russia was buried under heavy sanctions. So how on earth did he manage to funnel that much cash past all those international roadblocks and get it into the Russian system?
Well, the answer lies deep in the plumbing of global finance. It's a system called correspondent banking. Basically, it's how banks in different countries do business with each other. It's a necessary system, but it's also full of loopholes. Loopholes that, it seems, Epstein became an expert at exploiting.
So here's how it worked, as you can see in this chart. The money didn't just go straight from Epstein's account to an account in Russia. That would have set off all kinds of alarms. Instead, it moved from his US account, say at JP Morgan, into another account at that same bank, but this new account was held by a sanctioned Russian bank, like Sberbank. It's a clever workaround that created this financial pipeline, bypassing a lot of the sanctions.
Okay, so this is the crucial turning point. You have to understand this wasn't just about moving money. The files strongly suggest that this whole financial machine was just one part of a much older, much deeper intelligence game that Epstein basically inherited.
And inherited from who? Well, from Robert Maxwell. That's Ghislaine's father. Maxwell was this larger-than-life media mogul who was widely suspected of being a triple agent, working for the KGB, MI6, and Mossad all at once. The theory laid out in these files is that Epstein didn't have to build this spy network himself. He just stepped into it, thanks to Ghislaine.
He inherited a fully formed intelligence infrastructure.
And what did he do with it? He allegedly upgraded it into what you might call a compromat factory. Compromat, that's Russian for compromising material, basically blackmail. And the files suggest it had three main parts. Step 1, a human trafficking pipeline, using modeling agencies to bring women in from Eastern Europe. Step 2, the financial pipeline we just talked about, using Russian banks to fund the whole thing. And Step 3, a high-tech surveillance system on his private island to record everything, creating a permanent archive of blackmail material.
And all of this, of course, brings us to one of the biggest names mentioned in these files, Donald Trump. Because what these new documents show is that his relationship with Epstein was a lot closer and involved a lot more travel than we ever knew before.
Yeah, the new flight logs are pretty revealing. They confirm at least 8 separate flights on Epstein's jet, all between 1993 and 1996. That's right in the middle of the period investigators have focused on. One of those flights was just Trump and Epstein, nobody else. Ghislaine Maxwell was on at least 4 of them, and other passengers included women who were later flagged as possible witnesses. Now, this doesn't mean he participated in any crimes, but it absolutely places him as a witness to that whole scene.
But, and this is a really important point to make, for all the new details about their association across all 3.5 million pages of these files, one thing remains consistent. There is still zero evidence that Donald Trump ever set foot on Epstein's private island, Little St. James.
So, you might be thinking, why does any of this matter now? Epstein's gone, right? Well, here's why it's still so relevant. According to at least one leader of a NATO country, this case is anything but closed. In fact, they see it as an active, ongoing threat to national security today.
And that leader is the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk. Just recently, he launched a formal national security investigation because he believes it's increasingly likely that Russian intelligence was in on this from the start. And get this, he thinks the compromat they gathered might still be out there, being actively used to blackmail world leaders right now. And if you look at the data, this theory starts to get some serious statistical weight. The numbers themselves are just incredible. Vladimir Putin's name comes up over 1,000 times. The word Russia is in there over 9,000 times, and Moscow even more. That sheer volume, it doesn't really point to one rogue financier. It points to something much bigger, much more organized, maybe even state-sponsored.
So when you boil it all down, the verdict from these files is this really stark contrast. On one hand, Epstein, the grand strategist, a complete failure. His big, world-changing financial plans for Russia were just vaporware, totally rejected. But on the other hand, Epstein, the tactical operator, the guy who could build a pipeline to move $1 billion, he was an undeniable and frankly a profoundly dangerous success.
And so that leaves us with the final, really unsettling question. The files are open, but the leverage might still be out there. Epstein is gone, his grand schemes are history, but what about that archive of blackmail material? The real question isn't just about what happened back then. The real question is, who holds Epstein's secrets now?